So very good morning to all our change makers. Today's guest is a very close friend of mine. We both went to the same college. We went to the same school also, actually, different branches, of course. And I think both our sons' names are, they have Veer as a common name as a part of this. So very happy to have Bharat on the show. Thank you for coming, Bharat. Great to see you.
Glad to make this happen.
Yeah. So we'll jump straight to it, Bharat. If you can just tell us briefly what's been happening in your life for the last, 5-6 years since we graduated. The journey of your entrepreneurship. That'll be a good start.
To the audience who doesn't know, Vamshi and I went to Purdue together, and we were roommates for quite some time.
We fought a lot also during that period.
So Vamshi, I think since we graduated, I've been sort of spending time in education a lot. My granddad founded a university called Geetham. I've been working in Geetham for about 3-4 years. And then after I finished my first 3-4 year stint there, I went back to the US to study MBA, and I did a joint degree in education.
You went to Stanford, right, Bharat? Stanford.
Then I moved back, and then I sort of left education for a 2.5 year period. I worked in energy and in sort of a journey in entrepreneurship. I set up a solar energy plant, and I was working on a hydro energy plant. And in that journey was when my granddad, my sort of mentor, founder of Geetham, asked me to consider entering public life and contesting elections. Circumstances of it also were, he got dengue fever then, in April of 2018. Given that I was very interested in being in public life, and I grew up very close to both my grandfathers who've both been in public life, I thought, what 29-year-old will get this opportunity, and when I do, why should I say no? And since I'm interested, I should say yes. So after that, I moved to Vizag, and I was going to take a house. On the day I was taking the house, I heard news that my paternal granddad got into a fatal accident in Alaska. He had gone there for a visit to meet the alumni of Geetham and just meet his friends and well-wishers. So it came as a shock to us all. And that was difficult. I mean, he was still the head of the family, still running the organization, and I was still looking to him a lot for mentorship. So both personally and as a family, it was a big hit. And his loss created a vacuum for sure.
Of course.
And it took us all a month to recover and sort of get our bearings right. And at that point, I've been a governing body member in Geetham for about 8 years. I'm quite familiar with the organization, but I didn't expect that I would be leading it full time anytime soon. After he passed away, I was keen that the organization is going in the right direction, and that I was interested to lead. Family also supported, and I stepped into this role, and it's been about 1.5 years now. And I didn't leave the other journey, so I did start working in public life. I aspired for the parliament ticket for Visakhapatnam, and I did get the ticket from TDP, and I contested the elections, but I lost.
So we'll come to the political side in a bit, Bharat. I think just want to share some time on how the Geetham experience was. How was it entering from a US background to India and Indian setting of education? How was that experience?
Right. So I knew that Geetham existed. I knew that Geetham was large, but I didn't have detailed context on exactly what we do. Because the Hyderabad campus started only in 2009. Until then... and I've grown up most of my life in Hyderabad. So Visakhapatnam, I know that it's there, but I haven't spent as much time in Geetham. I knew long term I wanted to do something in public service, but I didn't in the short term, no. I was actually, my first 6 months back from college, I worked in construction, I worked in Carvi. So I worked in a few different places. I still trying to figure myself out. That's when the Tata came and said, we're starting this campus in Hyderabad, we're building the campus and everything, and why don't you get involved? It will be a learning experience for you. So I started off mostly looking at project management, so not education, but more building of the complex and the architecture and the design and all of those things. And it was a learning curve for me because I was an industrial engineer, and this was a lot of civil engineering work.
Correct.
But, I think industrial engineering overall gives you the perspective of how do you improve quality, how do you improve operational efficiency. that education really helped me. Civil engineering, I think if you spend enough time, you'll pick it up. It's not that challenging. And a year into that, I was getting more involved, and by virtue of being the grandson of the president, a lot of faculty members, leaders were at least in the Hyderabad campus, and the external stakeholders were coming to me saying that, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that?
Management roles.
Questions on external partnerships and also internal changes. And I saw how the thing was working and what our curriculum was, what our syllabus is, how our organization functions, the entire culture. It was very, very different from what you and I experienced in Purdue.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprising and also quite disappointing. Not particularly to Geetham, it is a reflection of...
Sure.
And also in Geetham, I could see that we were reflecting that. It was more theoretical, more emphasis on rote learning rather than application of mind, more rigid hierarchical environments where the faculty hold the power and students don't necessarily have that free speech. I think relative to training and coaching institutions, far more liberal, but relative to what we experienced in Purdue, definitely not very.
Yeah. So how did you change that, Gautam? Bharat, how did you work on that?
I was a 21-year-old. I was passionate and I wanted to make a difference, but I didn't know how to run an organization. So you just are a young, passionate guy and you start asking a lot of questions, and it does rub people the wrong way. And you start, you want change. You want it to change quickly. It's not possible for it to change quickly. That's where my granddad used to sort of moderate and mentor, and I used to tell him 100 things that we should do, and he would do 3 or 4 of them. The remaining he wouldn't. At the time, I used to be like, why is he being so sort of resistant to change? And I would also say that as I was finding out problems, it was like peeling off layers in an onion. And as you keep peeling the layers, more layers start opening. And ultimately, you reach the bulb, which in this case is the root cause of the problem. And once you reach the root cause, you get more clarity. And that took me about 2.5 years to reach there. It was not that I reached it overnight. And in that 2.5 year journey, by the time I reached the destination, some of the key areas were that leadership was a big challenge in our organization and in academia overall, because the barriers to entry are very high. You need to have a PhD, you need to have X amount of experience before you become a professor, and only a professor can become a director, only a director can become a vice chancellor. So by the time a lot of people go through this system, not everyone is equipped to be a good leader. They may be a good teacher or a good researcher, but unfortunately in academia, you're rewarded to be a good teacher and researcher, but not necessarily rewarded to be a good manager. Yeah. So in a private environment where there are limited barriers, like a corporate organization, anyone can become CEO, anyone can become MD, whatever, right?
Correct.
Academia, those barriers exist. And because of that, we realized that the people who were at the top were people who were old school, came from 30, 40-year-old experience. And that is their world. They are not very privy to what's happening in the world today and not very open to change. And as long as their mindset is like that, no amount of ideas from below will seep through. So no junior faculty member who has progressive ideas was welcome, right? It was like, you do what we tell you. Yeah, we are asking, teach, you ask me to do research, but don't try to shake things up. So that needed to change. And by the time I realized that, by the time I got an understanding, I was really getting involved, and there was a uncomfortable resistance from my granddad, because he was like, you're young and still haven't made anything of yourself. You still haven't become successful as an entrepreneur. You haven't earned any money. I set up Geetham as a rich man, with an intention to give back. But you started your career in Geetham and you don't even get a salary here. So I don't expect you to do much here unless you're financially independent. So about 2013 was when he said, I want you to leave, go start a business. If you want to study further, go do that. And we both agreed, me unwillingly, because I was really enjoying my work in Geetham.
Okay.
But I applied for MBA, and that process took about 6 months, 9 months. And at the end of it, fortunately, I got in, and I got married also around the same time. So wife and I, both of us together, went to the US.
That's very nice, Bharat. I think good experience. I think especially from your grandfather's pinpointing where we need to really add value and where we need to step back. I think
Right.
Most of us our age experience that with our mentors when we join the business. What is that you feel is going to be the future of Indian education? Because you're seeing a lot of Indian students are stuck abroad, especially with this whole pandemic happening. I think people are realizing that we have to look at other alternatives, right? So what is that you feel India can stand up to in terms of education?
Very, very complex question, Vamshi, and I can speak about it for hours.
Sure.
Try to narrow it down to a few current developments in the space of education. One is the new education policy for the country has been announced, and there are a lot of proposed changes in that, and there's a lot of debate going on around the country on what this means. And education is a concurrent subject, so it's not that the center says it and everybody does it. The states also have to agree to it, or they also have to incorporate it into their state education, and only then take impact. So the national education policy speaks about school education, speaks about higher education, and how we should change it. Principle is liberalize, make it easy for people to learn, and make it easy for people to have more flexibility in life, so that they're not in rigid structures. For example, today, if you're in a college, if you join a degree, you have to complete that degree. You can't change your major like how we had the option of doing that. Right? Or you can't leave at the end of 2 years and then come back 10 years later to complete your degree. And even in schools, it's first to 10th and then 11th and 12th. But now they're proposing a very different model. They're talking about 5-3-3-4, and basically how to make it more accessible to people and easy entry, easy exit. All of these things, what it will work is we have a huge population, and demographically, we are a very young population. And if we don't equip this workforce with skills, with knowledge, with values, we're facing worst case and anarchy, right? We get on the streets because they don't have jobs, they don't have food. So this is a big challenge, and the government needs to educate them, and definitely we need to address it. How do we help the people who are within India go through a good schooling system and a good higher education system is critical.
Very well steered into the next part of what I wanted to ask you. When I heard that you are going to stand as an MP in Visakhapatnam, I was very shocked. I was like, wow, I didn't expect Bharat because of course, what we knew each other from college and school to suddenly cut to 10 years he's standing. I was very pleasantly surprised. I even texted you at that time saying, wow, that's really amazing. So how was that whole experience? And you were quite young at that time, still hardly a year and a half ago. How was that experience?
I've grown up in politics. I think you've also grown up in a politician. So politics is not new to me. Both my grandfathers have been members of parliament since 1984. So I've seen that life. I've been to the constituency many times in both of their constituencies. I've spent a lot of my early childhood in Delhi. I've interacted with many leaders and many bureaucrats in both sides. Right, my mother's father was Congress, and my father's father was in TDP. Both perspectives as well. Advantage of that is when you see so many different perspectives, you get a sense of what you care for and what you stand for. With the interest to enter politics, I knew what kind of a person I want to be, what I want to do if I was elected. I did not know as well on what I should do to get elected. So how do you begin a political career? Because for an average individual my age, to do it is almost impossible, because there are no avenues available for a 28-year-old to aspire to get a member of parliament ticket.
Correct.
But because you are going to get about 20 lakh voters having to take a decision on whether they want you to be their leader or not. For me, it's all about legacy. It's what I'm getting from my grandfather, what work he's done there. And what I bring to the table is, given that I am getting this opportunity, can I convince my party that I will make a good candidate and that I will serve both the party and the interests of the state? And can I convince the voters that I bring something fresh to the table? Advantages are that, yes, I get an easy step in the door. And the other is, I haven't had to face many challenges. Oftentimes what happens, and what I've seen in the political system or in any system, do a lot of unethical things to reach a place of success, because the system does not allow you to grow if you are fair.
Correct.
It does not allow you to grow if you're trying to do things in a linear manner. There are many powerful people who will not let you grow. So fortunately from me, I have not been negatively impacted by any of those negative influences. So I come with a fresh, idealistic perspective, and I don't have the desire to step on people or to make a quick buck or
Yeah, yeah.
make a reputation overnight, because it's not something new to me. Rather, the perspective I come in is both my granddads have built a reputation for themselves in 30 years. It is a difficult place to enter and try to live up to those expectations. And how do you work hard to ensure that not only do you do the good work that they did, but also add value to the current scenario? Because politics have changed, society has changed. The same things that you used to do in the past, you can't do anymore.
Sure. So
the steps, how do we get into the people, was that we were doing health camps in Visakhapatnam at the time. And we also have a hospital in our university. And through that, I conducted personally about 70-75 health camps. And we saw between 500 to 2,500 patients coming into those camps. And we did like the entire basic checkup routine, including specialists coming to the camps. And that was an opportunity to go touch people, right? So through these camps itself, I was able to directly interact with about 70,000-80,000 people. At least I spoke to everyone, but everyone saw me, everyone could hear me, to hear my thoughts. So that was a great touch point. And beyond that, any events that I was invited to, anywhere that I was asked to speak, any interviews, I was happy to give my perspective. And the whole ideology is, I'm a privileged guy. I come from a privileged background. And politics today is not a pleasant place to be. It's a thankless job. You have to give up time with your family. You have to give up times to, you won't make any money legitimately. If you're willing to be corrupt, that's a different story. Having done my undergrad and postgraduate education in the US, the quality of life over there is much better. The return on investment of your time is fairly substantial. So if you're well educated, you do your job well, or you start a company, you will get rewarded. And you will have freedom, independence. You won't have judgment. You'll be able to live this life. And even you'll be able to spend time with your family. In this life in India, which I chose to come back to, you don't get many of those individual freedoms. The larger things which I really care about is I want to be close to my family. I want to give back to the community that I grew up in. And those are that drove me. But today, if you see my life since I entered politics last year and a half, I've spent most of my time alone in Visakhapatnam, and my wife and son live in Hyderabad. Came to Vizag for a few months here and there, but I'm always so busy at work that my wife is alone and she doesn't have close.
Correct. Life is here. Yeah.
So that's a challenge, right? So now I'm living alone, and I have to give up on all of my family life. And my parents live in Hyderabad. My maternal grandparents live in Hyderabad. So that's one thing that's gone. The other is I have a lot of my friends in Hyderabad which I've given up.
Correct.
But I don't complain, because Vizag is home now, and I've built new relations, and I've grown up in Vizag every summer, so I feel a sense of belonging.
I mean, you're really putting things in perspective in terms of what is actually happening, and it doesn't sound easy at all, let me tell you, especially from someone who knows from afar and still is afar, luckily, till now. What keeps you going? Why do you make so many sacrifices? Why are you giving up your family time? What is that is driving you?
Early childhood influences, Vamshi, because I spent so much time during my formative years with my maternal grandfather. And he always used to keep pushing me that you're born in a wealthy family, you're born with a silver spoon. If you just want to eat food, have clothes, have a good life, then I think you don't have to do much to have that. But if you aspire for that, I will be disappointed. I came up from a lower middle class background, and I reached where I am because of that fire in the belly and with the desire to excel. So that desire to excel has come. I think that is something that I've absorbed from him. The choice of industry and the choice of work is something that has developed over time. But the desire to excel, that whatever we do, we should be very good at it and we should like what we do. That's what drives me. And the kind of impact that you can have on people's lives, I personally do not derive any happiness from any material wealth. So, in fact, since I've entered into public life last year and a half, I've stopped looking after my businesses. I just get a salary, that's it. And there's no wealth generation that I'm able to focus my time on. But I'm still happy because at the end of the day, what is it that you want, right? So like you and I, when we've grown up, we've had most of material comforts around us. What I desire is how many people can I impact? How many people's lives can I change? And again, I'm not the kind who feels that I want to be a frontline soldier. I'm not someone who does humanitarian efforts, and every time there is someone who's going through something, I don't hit the road. I am driven more by governance challenges. I'm like, how do we improve this system? How do we ensure that more leaders come out? How do we ensure that it's more equitable society? How do we ensure that everyone gets access to opportunity? So these are the things that excite me. And whether through education or through public life, you're able to do that differently, but both of them lead to that destination.
So what is something that you felt, that this was of good impact that this was something that I did which had a larger impact than what I expected? Can you share something like that?
Yeah, so you did mention this to me, but I don't know. I don't think I've had any major impact yet because I'm just beginning. I've learned a lot from everyone around me, and I'm trying to give it back for the last 2-3 years. Both in public life, I came very close. I lost with a margin of 3,000 votes.
Yeah.
And it was a 3-way fight between the YSRCP candidate and then J.D. Lakshminarayanan stood, and he was a strong candidate who sort of took a lot of intellectual votes, which I was gunning for, right? So in spite of that, when I came that close, it was heartening that, okay, even in the limited time, people have expressed faith in me that although this guy is young, he does have potential. So even though I lost the elections, I view that as a win because I was able to gain the trust of 432,000 voters. The winning candidate got 436,000, right? So I view that as a win. And also convincing my party that I should get the ticket. From the outside, it was like, oh, you're related to the family, so you'll easily get the ticket. But internally, that was not the case. Internally, you have to, I know what I went through. From March 8th to March 19th, those 11 days where the party was finalizing, 11 days I had no clue whether I was going to get it or not, right? So the principle that I took from my father's father was that put your best foot forward, put all of your effort. And after that, if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, you have enough capability and energy to do something else.
Correct.
You don't have to.
So how did you express and who did you express it to saying, you know what, I think these elections I want to take part in?
Even before I entered, I think my granddad told leaders in Visakhapatnam, the MLAs, that I'd like my grandson to come and active in public life. And I think those feelers also went to the party, and party had an inkling that this aspiration is there. But by the time I could have that conversation, my granddad passed away. So I was sort of alone. And because Lokesh Anna is my co-brother, so I was able to speak to him and say that this is my intention, I would like to. Then he said that you have an aspiration, now you have stayed. The boss will decide. There are so many other things that we need to do. At the end of the day, our party needs to govern and everybody else comes along with it. You work hard on the ground, you prove yourself, and we will see at the time of elections. That's what I did. And fortunately, yes, I've crossed over to the other side. Party has placed its trust. Ticket, and I did contest.
And you spoke about building yourself, right? Of course, definitely we have our support from the family side, but to go into the public and to build yourself as a person now, what are the activities you are eyeing for, which you feel, yes, these are the things that I need to do in my, which are in my control?
Expectation setting is an important aspect because when you're an aspiring parliamentarian, you have to be conscious that you can't be a grassroots leader because you can't satisfy the needs of 25 lakh people if everyone wants to call you. Daily, if I'm willing to meet 100 people, so that means in 5 years, that's 365 days, that's 1,500 into 100 would still come only to 15 lakhs. I still will not be able to cover just imagine the life where every day 100 different people. So that's not practical. So what you have to instead see is, as a parliamentarian, you're focusing on issues of the region, representing what the state's interests are in the parliament, and ensuring that you bring in investments and develop policy that benefits both your region, your state, and your country. And so as a parliamentarian, you're expected to be, or at least you should be, more of a thought leader, more who brings together ideas that the party can work on. The other, you also play the role of a coordinator. You ensure that leaders within your constituency have a good team dynamic, are able to work well together, and you are accessible to all your leaders. While you should be accessible to everyone, practically if you're accessible to all your leaders who are basically from the corporators and district leaders and the village sarpanches, and when you talk to them, you get an understanding of the issues within their village or within their mandal or within their ward, and then you can take that up. So that's a good way of doing. And once you identify this, you take some pitch. So when I contested, I built a manifesto from Visakhapatnam saying that these are the issues in Visakhapatnam that I want to focus on. The theme was a happy and healthy Vizag, and the emphasis was on education, healthcare, water, some key fundamental elements that need to be built in urban ecosystems. Because we have large growing cities that are not catering to these basic needs of education, healthcare, water, sanitation. If you can improve that, the quality of life improves significantly. Visakhapatnam is a majority urban constituency.
Does this age factor matter, Bharat? Because you spoke about corporators, you spoke about different levels of leaders within the party, different cadres. And you coming from, the lineage that, of course, that you have. Does the age factor matter, saying that, oh, this guy is young or handling?
In the beginning, I think everybody does have their doubts, saying that this young guy, what does he know, what will he do and all that. But the way you conduct yourself, the way you communicate, the way you relate to everyone does matter. And the other is sort of what kind of identity do you bring to the table? I have a clear idea of what I want to do. And I have a core set of values that I practice. And because I try to do that, for me, it's easy to engage with a 5-year-old or a 70-year-old. Because I stick to those things regardless of who they are. And that helps me. The other is I come from a place of confidence and a place of clarity. So leaders appreciate that. Because they're like, okay, this fellow knows what he wants to do and he's speaking sense. There is some logic. What I cannot do is command presence or basically say, you guys do this or you guys do that. What Granddad used to do as a leader in Visakhapatnam or in Uttarandhra, I can't do. And I don't expect to either. That takes time to accumulate, to earn that respect. And I'm not in a hurry. And so in that way, I play myself more as a team player. And my nature is also not authoritative in external environment. I try to go along with the team.
So one very important lesson, which I think most entrepreneurs or anybody in life, rather, not I shouldn't say just entrepreneurs, is about failure. In India, especially, I've noticed after coming back, and we are here for almost 10 years now. Failure is seen as something very bad, negative connotation. Arey, wo fail ho gaya. It's almost demeaning and different ways of viewing it, not positive at least. How did you face it when you missed by hardly 3,000 votes? And how did you handle it? How do you look forward from an experience like that?
So definitely, obviously I also don't like failure, and failures did make me feel bad. I remember in 5th class, it was the first time in my life I failed in internal biology test. And I still remember that. So, which means that failure does impact me. But over time, as I kept working on it, I started realizing that I'm more upset if I don't work hard. I'm more upset if I could have done something and I didn't. I'm not someone who holds regrets. And I also, to the extent possible, don't try to keep attachments. So when I don't have attachment to the outcome, success or failure doesn't impact me as much. So momentarily, any failure pinches and any loss pinches, but I recover from it very quickly because I don't keep that attachment that, oh, if I won, I would have been a member of parliament, I would have had this status or this. I don't have attachment to that. I'm like, if I have it or don't have it, it's okay. So when you don't have attachment, you're much more open to failure because you're like, okay, worst case, what will happen, right? I'm not going to die. I'm a privileged individual regardless, so I'll be fine. So when you come from that context, you're able to deal with things much easier. And in my particular case, because I was also leading Geetam, I thought that this is a sign from God that I could spend more time with Geetam in these 5 years. Because had I won, I would not have had that privilege. So that I think I'm really lucky to have an alternative place where I can spend a lot of my time and energy, and which I have been doing. Since my loss, I've sort of been spending a lot more time with Geetam to ensure that the organization is stabilized and good leadership comes in, so that in 2-3 years from now, I don't have to spend as much time with Geetam anymore, and it sort of runs on autopilot. and I can spend more time with public life.
So also one more point that comes out very glaringly, and which you also mentioned, is you come from a place of confidence and clarity. I think that also definitely we can see that, yeah, this is what I want and a way to go. What do you do in terms of relaxation, in terms of hobby? What do you do to maintain your, mess of so many things happening?
So, see, I'm not a very productive person if you leave me alone. I've realized that, because when I don't have a target that I'm chasing, I tend to relax. And I like that part about myself, because I've seen both my granddads and they could never sit idle. Like my father also, if you tell him sit at home, like now with COVID, 4 months at home, no work, they go mad. But you give me work 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, work that I like, I'll be happy. Or you don't give me any work, I'll keep myself entertained. So I watch a lot of movies, I watch a lot of TV shows, I used to play a lot of video games, but now those have come down. I still play some games on my phone and on the computer, but the time commitment has significantly reduced because demands of life have changed. Especially, I think, when I made that transition to like Geetham and public life, earlier I had the luxury of watching like TV shows like Game of Thrones and sit for 1, 2, 3 hours and watch. But especially my first year in Vizag, I was like, I couldn't watch anything for more than 20 minutes. So it was like mentally also, I just couldn't get myself to do that, because there was something pressing on my mind to do it.
Correct.
Now, about a year and a half into the journey, and also with COVID, it's been a little bit more time on hand, spending more time at home, and that's been fine. So it's the ability to switch on and switch off, which I like. And I'm a happy guy. I always like to have fun. I don't like to keep my mood down. So spending time with friends is something that I used to do a lot when I was in Hyderabad. But Vizag, it sort of became a solitary life. It was just work home. I used to reach home by 8, 9 p.m., eat dinner, watch about an hour of TV or YouTube or something, and talk to Teju or someone and just go to sleep. It was a fixed route for a year and a half.
Fixed route. So great, Bharat. I think last question to end it. What is that you're looking forward to? Either politics or Geetham or your son or anything. I mean, it's just a very open-ended question. What is that one thing you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, last 4 months I've had a lot more time with my 2-year-old son than I've had before, and I'm loving that time. I mean, he's communicating, he's understanding, and that's great. What I look forward to, I think what drives me all the time right now has been work. So it's about building Geetham. It's about building a good public environment within our state and contributing to that both within the party. And these are all challenges that are like climbing a mountain, like I'm Mount Everest, right? No matter how much you climb, you still have a long way to go.
Sure.
So, because you can't change people overnight, even whether it be the 25,000 students or 1,500 faculty that we have, or the 5-6 crore people that live in Andhra Pradesh. You can't suddenly come and preach some values or something and expect people will accept or do it. You know that we are in a society today where people are chasing short-term outcomes, shortcuts to success, and people believe that it doesn't matter what I do to get there, as long as I get there, saat khun maaf. Anything in the past, but once you're rich, nobody cares. Everybody forgives you and everybody likes you.
Yeah.
And the value given to respect and values is gone. Today, a guy who's honest, who stands by his word, who does the right thing, is nobody even thinks and talks about that person. He's talking about who's the richest person, who's the chief minister, who's this minister, that minister. So can we set a precedence where if you stand for a certain identity and if you do good work, you will be recognized and you will inspire millions others to follow suit. So I would love to be a role model, both deeply to our own students and ecosystem, but overall to anyone I can be to, right? So the aspiration is you go out there, you speak for what you believe in, you stand for that, you don't bend easily, and it's not going to be easy. You are going to face media trial daily. You're going to be in an environment where people will try to discredit you and nobody knows what the truth is. It is impossible in this world to be anything, right? Because I know many people who are projected very well in the media and are not very good people behind the screens. And I know many people are projected very negatively in the media, but behind the screens are very nice people and genuine people. The perception management, the media management has become such a critical element. And the world, Kali Yuga on
Yes.
the society and time is not waiting for anybody. So how do you stay ahead in a world like this is a challenge for anybody. And I can't do it alone. So can I build a team of people who echo similar values? And together, can we work on these challenges and can we impact ecosystems beyond ourselves and beyond our organization? That's the inspiration. That's the aspiration. So working towards it, let's see what comes.
Great, Bharat. Thank you so much for doing this. I must say, I really enjoyed listening to all your answers. I think very much so because we know each other's stories and little similar, as you said, in terms of our life paths, if not for having very same life, but like a broader perspective of closure. But thank you so much for doing this. And I'm sure people watching this will definitely enjoy your journey looking forward and take it as an inspiration. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great talking.